God. I was out with my husband and my side guy came and grabbed my ass. My husband saw it and, hey Reddit, posting on here because I always see the TikTok videos with the Minecraft backgrounds. I've heard that this subreddit can be a place to get some really good advice. Hence why I'm doing this. I've never really used Reddit before this, but I have heard of it. My name is Miriam, and I am a 33-year-old woman. My husband's name is Neil, and he is 32. Neil and I have been married for about 2 years. We have 2 kids, the eldest is 6 years old and the youngest is 4. He recently found out that I had been cheating on him, and now wants a divorce, which I think is absurd because it was just a mistake. I feel like he needs to forgive me, and I also need some way to win back his trust, so I would really appreciate any advice. Neil and I met in college. He thinks it was true love and a coincidence that we met, but it was not. I had already heard about Neil, and I knew that he came from a very wealthy family. I didn't want to suffer, and by the time I was in college, I already knew that I would not do well as a worker, and that I definitely wasn't made to suffer. I didn't want to struggle like other people and spend countless hours a week trying to climb the corporate ladder, just so I could be paid some major money as salary. I also wasn't really the best at school, so there was also that too. Neil was my new ticket. Neil and I started dating, and we've been together ever since. He was the perfect package, which I wanted. He was handsome while he was also from a wealthy family, which meant that my needs were taken care of. Neil's family did not like me, and they tried their best to dissuade Neil from dating me. They even went as far as making me sign a prenup when we got married and doing things like putting whatever property they bought for us under Neil's name, just to frustrate me and make me angry. But I never really cared because it didn't matter whether it was under my name or Neil's. I would still have access to it, and I wasn't planning on leaving Neil at all. Shortly after we graduated, before we even got married, I refused to go for my master's or even get a job. I told Neil I wanted to become a stay-at-home wife, and then when we had our kids, I was then a stay-at-home mom. I didn't want to work, so even when Neil again suggested getting me a job at his parents' company, I immediately refused. I just wanted to be able to stay home and do whatever I wanted. Neil took care of all the bills and expenses, and I took care of the home. It was a very simple arrangement that worked for us. Neil's family's disapproval never bothered me much. Their attempts to make me feel unwelcome only made my determination to stay by Neil's side stronger. Despite the prenup and the property titles, I knew I was secure. Neil loved me, and that was all that mattered. Our life together was comfortable. Neil's career was flourishing, and I enjoyed being able to just stay home and relax. Things were great, but I've got to admit, there was a part of our relationship that's been bugged me. Our intimacy, or lack thereof, was kind of a sore spot. It's not that Neil and I didn't have our moments. We did, but they were too few and far between. His crazy schedule kept us apart more than I liked, and when we did have time together, it was rushed, and it lacked that spark we used to have. I understood. Neil's was busy providing for us, and I was grateful for that. But it also left our bedroom life feeling a bit routine and predictable. I missed the passionate, spontaneous moments we used to share. Yeah, of course I didn't want to seem ungrateful, so I kept those feelings to myself. I put on a happy face for the sake of our seemingly perfect life. But deep down, I wanted more than just material comforts. I wanted the connection we had when he first fell in love with me. Sometimes I wondered if Neil felt the same way or if he was okay with how things were. I also wondered if maybe it was just the natural progression of a long-term relationship, but I still wanted something more. As things continued, I noticed that the gap in our intimacy only kept on growing. It wasn't as frequent or fulfilling as I wanted, partly because Neil was always busy with work. This started bothering me, so I decided to have a serious talk with him. I went to Neil and suggested that maybe we should open up our marriage. I thought it could inject some excitement and closeness back into our lives. But Neil shut down the idea immediately. He was adamant about keeping our marriage strictly monogamous, and he reminded me about our vows and commitment. His refusal hit me hard. I felt upset and frustrated because I genuinely believed it could help us. Neil's rigid stance made me feel like he didn't understand my needs or consider what might improve our relationship. It led to an argument between us, and I started to wonder if we could ever bridge this gap. Despite Neil saying no, I kept nudging him subtly. I didn't want our marriage to feel completely empty, even though I married Neil for his financial stability. But wanting some intimacy didn't mean I was ready to throw everything away. No matter how much I hinted or got upset, Neil stood firm. He bluntly pointed out that if I couldn't find happiness in our marriage, maybe it was time to consider divorce. The mere thought of divorce shook me to the core. Neil wasn't just my husband. He was my rock. my stability. Losing that was unimaginable, even if it meant suppressing my desires. So I backed off from pushing for change and tried to distract myself. I hit the gym more often and started finding solace in workouts and the routine of our daily life, since the kids were old enough for school and we had help at home. Gym was my way of coping, even though deep down, I knew something was still missing in our relationship. During that time, since I was now spending more time at the gym, I crossed paths with Simon. He was another regular at the gym, and it didn't take long to notice that he had taken an interest in me. Simon wasn't subtle about it at all. He'd often give me flirty glances, toss playful comments my way, and go out of his way to assist me with equipment or exercises. His smile would light up whenever I caught him looking my way. At first, I tried to brush off his advances and keep my distance. After all, I was married, and despite the issues with Neil, I didn't want to complicate things further. But loneliness has a way of wearing down resistance. Simon's persistent attempts to befriend me and his charming behavior slowly broke down my walls. He'd suggest we work out together, propose coffee outings, and generally make efforts to get closer to me. As time went on, I couldn't dodge Simon anymore. His persistence and charm had chipped away at my defenses. I figured it wouldn't hurt to be pals with him since Neil never laid down any rules about hanging out with guys. So I started chatting with Simon more, accepting his help, flirting back, and exchanging smiles. We hit it off, exchanging numbers, and soon we were talking regularly, just enjoying each other's company and chatting about all sorts of stuff. Even though I felt a twinge of guilt, it was nice to have someone else to talk to, and a bit of excitement outside my usual routine with Neil. As Simon and I grew closer, I found a newfound happiness. We were always chatting, and I often found myself glued to my phone, eagerly awaiting his messages. I became quite protective of my phone, changing passwords and being cautious about leaving it unattended. Although Neil never directly confronted me about it, I could tell he noticed something was up. He would give me curious looks whenever he caught me laughing or smiling at my phone, almost as if he sensed there was more to my interactions than I was letting on. As I grew closer to Simon, I found myself pulling away from Neil even more. The emptiness and longing I once felt were replaced by the joy and excitement I got from being with Simon. Our relationship went beyond just talking. We started spending a lot of time together outside our regular routines. We'd go out for movies, dinners, and other fun activities that I hadn't done in ages because it felt lonely doing them alone. Whenever the kids were at school and my daily chores were done, thanks to our helper, I would go out with Simon for a day out. We explored new places, shared meals, and had moments that brought back a spark in my life. Despite this, I was still cautious about taking things too far, so we stuck to public places. As I started hanging out more with Simon, Neil couldn't help but notice how often I was out and about. He gave me a curious look and asked what was up with my sudden social life. I played it cool, telling him that I was just enjoying myself, trying to have some fun after feeling so lonely for a while. Neil seemed to understand and even felt sorry for not realizing how isolated I had been. He promised to try and be around more, even talking about cutting back on work. Meanwhile, my time with Simon evolved. We began spending time at his place watching movies, playing games, and just chilling together. Simon didn't know I was married. He thought I was just a private person. Things between Simon and me started heating up fast. We went from hanging out innocently to having sex quite quickly. Even though he asked me out several times, I avoided committing to a serious relationship at first. I liked what we had, but I wasn't ready to leave my marriage or make a commitment. However, Simon grew tired of the uncertainty. He gave me an ultimatum, saying he wanted more than just casual encounters. He wanted a real relationship with me. I was hesitant, knowing the complications of my situation, but eventually I agreed to take things further with him. Deep down, I hoped I could manage the situation without it getting too complicated. I thought I could handle things and just dump Simon if he became too serious. Well, as my relationship with Simon continued, I became more cautious about what I shared with him. I strategically dodged his questions, especially those probing into my personal life. I didn't want him to know too much about me, fearing that he could use that information to manipulate or control me if things took a turn. I played it cool, telling him I didn't have social media when I did, and I carefully avoided any discussions about my family or personal background. It was all part of my plan to keep a distance and ensure that I had an escape route if I ever needed to step back from the relationship without any complications. Balancing my affair with Simon and my marriage to Neil was like walking a tightrope without a safety net. It took careful planning and quick thinking to keep everything under wraps. I got pretty good at toggling my phone's location settings and leaving it behind at home strategically. Neil wasn't the type to check my location often, which made things easier, but I couldn't let my guard down for a second. At first, sharing locations with Neil seemed like a sensible safety measure, in case we needed to find each other in an emergency. But over time, it became my cover-up, hiding my sneaky links with Simon. It's funny how things can twist like that. Despite my efforts to keep up appearances, guilt was always there, lurking in the background. Every time I silenced my phone or came up with a believable excuse, a pang of guilt hit me. I knew deep down that this secret wouldn't stay hidden forever. And yep, it finally came out. Neil's friend had invited us to a party he was throwing. We hadn't been to a party in a very long time as we were usually busy, but Neil suggested we go since it had been a while since we've gone out together. The nanny was with our kids, and Neil had made sure to finish work on time so we could attend the party together. It was a gesture that both surprised and pleased me. Neil's friend was someone we both cared about deeply, and I knew the event would be a great opportunity to catch up with our old friends and unwind. I did feel a little nagging feeling that I couldn't shake off. I felt like something wrong was going to happen, but I just decided that it was because it had been a while since Neil and I had gone to a social gathering like this. As the night progressed at the party, my husband and I were having a great time dancing together. The atmosphere was lively, the music was pumping, and everyone seemed to be in high spirits. We mingled with friends, shared laughs, and indulged in a few drinks. Then came the moment that turned everything upside down. As we were dancing, enjoying each other's company, I suddenly felt a sharp slap on my behind. It took me by surprise, and I turned around quickly to see who it was. To my shock and horror, it was Simon standing there with a mischievous grin on his face. I froze for a moment, feeling a mix of embarrassment, guilt, and panic. I glanced at my husband, hoping he hadn't noticed, but his expression told me otherwise. Neil's face darkened, his eyes had narrowed, and it was like he was trying to process what had just happened. I could see that he was angry, and I knew I was in deep trouble. In that instant, I regretted every decision that had led me to this point. My secret affair, the lies, the deceit, it all came crashing down in that single slap. The tension in the air felt suffocating as Simon just stood there, seemingly oblivious to what he had done. I was frozen. I was panicking and desperate to save myself, but I also wasn't thinking. Simon showing up at the party was a shocker. I never saw that coming, and if I had known, I would have avoided this mess altogether. But here we were, with Neil staring at me like he was waiting for an explanation, and I had to think on my feet. Simon started asking me all kinds of questions, and they were all hitting me like a ton of bricks. Who was Neil? Just a friend? Simon's directedness caught me off guard, and I was still struggling to find the right words. Well, I finally forced myself to calm down and decided I would throw Simon under the bus. In a split-second decision, I tried to downplay Simon's role. I was hoping to buy some time. So I turned to Neil and introduced Simon as my gym buddy, who I worked out with sometimes. I said Simon could be overly friendly sometimes. I shot pleading looks at Simon, silently urging him to play along, but he refused. He was visibly frustrated and angry as he corrected me, telling Neil that he was more than a friend. He was my boyfriend. Neil's jaw practically hit the floor. It was like a sin out of a movie. The room went quiet, everyone waiting for an explanation. But I had nothing. No excuse, no way to untangle the mess I'd created. I panicked. My mind had started racing again as I realized the enormity of what had just happened. In a moment of sheer panic, I bolted for the bedroom. I just didn't know what to do. I knew I was in trouble. Essentially, I was done for. If only I had known it would end like this, I would have cut things off with Simon ages ago. But now there was no going back. The bathroom felt like my only refuge, a small space where I could hide from the mess outside. Sitting on the toilet seat, I just prayed for some kind of miracle. I even shed a few tears. Everything I had worked for, all my efforts to secure financial stability, felt like they were crumbling because of Simon's careless and stupid reveal. Time kind of blurred together as I sat there. I was just lost in my thoughts and fears. When I finally came out, the party was winding down, and the few remaining guests were staring at me with silent judgment. Neil's friend shook his head in disapproval, and I couldn't blame him. I brushed past the lingering stares. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how to salvage my relationship with Neil. By the time I stepped outside, both Neil and Simon had already left. I called for an Uber, desperate to get home and sort out the chaos. We got home, and when I tried to pay the driver, I realized our joint account was frozen. I tried to go inside the house, hoping that Neil would give me money, but when I got past the gate, I realized my things were thrown outside on the porch. I panicked, bit still. I knocked on the door, hoping against hope that someone would answer, but nobody did. Neil must have instructed the nanny not to let me in. Left with no other options, I turned to our neighbor, practically begging for some money to settle the Uber fare. Thankfully, she understood the urgency, and I hurried back to pay off the driver. Leaving my home felt like admitting defeat, but I had no other option. With a heavy heart, I packed up my essentials, called for another Uber, and headed to my parents' house. Their surprise at my sudden arrival was understandable, but they welcomed me nonetheless. After settling in, they sat me down for a serious talk. I poured out the whole story to them, holding nothing back. Their disappointment was evident, and they didn't mince words about it. They made it clear that they can't house me indefinitely, and I need to face my husband and sort things out. The thought of losing Neil and everything we had built together is terrifying. I know I need to find a way to mend our relationship, but I am at a loss for where to start. I need advice, guidance, anything that can help me navigate this mess and salvage what is left of my life. Update. Hey, Reddit. I've been getting a lot of heat since my last post, and I get it. I messed up big time. I know I cheated, and I'm not proud of it, but constantly reminding me of my mistakes isn't helping anyone. If you don't have anything constructive to say, please refrain from commenting. Now, on to addressing some of the common comments and questions. Many of you criticize me for being ungrateful and using my husband for his money. Let's clear this up. I do love my husband. Yes, financial stability was a factor in our relationship, but it's not the sole reason I stayed with him. Love is complicated, and our relationship has many layers beyond just money. I repeat, my initial attraction to Neil's wealth doesn't mean I never loved him. It's more complex than just financial stability. I genuinely care for him. Some of you also questioned how Simon never got suspicious. Trust me, he did. I kept him in the dark about important details like my social media presence and even my last name. He grew suspicious, but I brushed it off with excuses about being a private person. It was deceitful, and I regret it now. Also, to answer a question I have been getting frequently. No, I haven't spoken to Simon since the party incident. He sent angry messages, accusing me, and then blocked me. As for the update, things haven't improved much. My parents are getting impatient. My husband wants a divorce, blaming me entirely for the cheating. I tried to explain my loneliness, but he sees it as excuses. He's adamant about ending things and even mentioned custody of our kids. I'm at a loss. I don't want a divorce, but I don't know how to fix this mess. Is there any hope for salvaging my marriage? Any advice would be appreciated. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm back and the hate train seems to be running strong. It's amazing how some of you can be so sarcastic and ironic in your comments. Yes, I've been called a gold digger and maybe I am. Who wouldn't want a better life? But seriously, let's not pretend like anyone here wouldn't do the same if given the chance. We all want comfort and security. Now for an actual update, I don't have much to report. My situation hasn't improved. My parents are growing impatient with my stay, understandably so. They're talking about intervening with my husband, trying to convince him to take me back. Money-wise, I'm completely broke. Our joint account was drained and now I have nothing. My parents can't keep supporting me indefinitely. As for Neil, he's still set on a divorce. I've tried visiting the kids, hoping to mend things, but he's distant. Whenever I'm around, he makes it clear he doesn't want me there. It's heartbreaking. I keep pleading for another chance, but he's adamant. So that's where things stand. It's a tough time, and I'm not sure what the future holds. Keep the constructive advice coming if you have any. Thanks for reading, even amidst the criticism. Update. Hey Reddit, mini update here. Today has been wild, and I need to fill you in on the latest. So my parents and I decided to pay Neil a visit, hoping they could work some magic and convince him to reconsider. I've been trying to reach out to Neil's parents too, but it seems like they blocked me. I bet they're thrilled that Neil finally kicked me out, and I'm sure he spilled the beans to them about everything. Anyway, back to today. We went to Neil's house, and surprisingly, he let us in. He was civil at first, but that didn't last long. My parents jumped in, pulling out all the stops to persuade him to forgive me. They even brought up religion and forgiveness, which was comical because none of us are particularly religious. Neil didn't hold back. He shut them down, pointing out the irony of preaching forgiveness when none of us were devout believers. He told my parents bluntly that they raised a cheater, and instead of trying to change his mind, they should reflect on their parenting. Ouch, that stung. Then Neil turned to me and started mocking me. He asked about Simon, knowing full well that Simon had cut ties with me. He said I got what I deserved for trying to manipulate everyone. He made it clear that I couldn't have my cake and eat it too. It was humiliating, to say the least. In the end, he kicked us out, leaving me feeling utterly embarrassed. I guess I have a lot to think about, especially about the consequences of my actions. Update. Hey Reddit, quick update from me. Today was rough. I got served with divorce papers and it hit me hard. I couldn't bring myself to see the kids as planned because I was just overwhelmed with sadness. I didn't want them to see me in that state. Neil has been talking to the kids and explaining things in a way they can understand. They're a bit confused, but Neil assured me he told them that I would be living in a different house, and they seem to think having two houses would be cool. It's bittersweet, but I'm glad they're coping as best as they can. I'm trying to process everything right now. It's a lot to take in, but I wanted to share this little update with you all. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a minute since I last checked in. Honestly, I almost forgot this place existed, but I knew the hate train would still be chugging along when I returned. Not disappointed, Reddit. Not disappointed at all. Nah. So here's the final update you've all been waiting for. Neil and I are officially divorced. Let me give you the rundown. We went through the whole court process, which was surprisingly quick. You see, where I live, there's typically a 1-year separation period before divorce. But if you file based on infidelity, things move much faster. Neil took that route, citing my infidelity, and boom, court proceedings accelerated. The courtroom experience was brutal. My parents begrudgingly paid for a lawyer, and let's just say the odds weren't in my favor. Infidelity is a serious deal here, and it heavily influences custody decisions. Guess what? Neil got custody and I got weekend visitations. It stung, to say the least. As for assets, well, I barely got anything. A small amount of cash that's already dwindling, and now I'm left with debts to repay. No house, no major assets, just a reality check. Now, on to the job hunt. It's been tough given my resume gap and lack of work experience post-graduation. I snagged a job with an okay salary, but it's below average. Still, it's a start. Living with my parents has been a lifesaver, even though I thought they'd kick me out ages ago. They're letting me stay while I pay them minimal rent. Eventually, I'll move out and probably get a roommate because housing costs are insane here. I'm hopeful for the future, despite the setbacks. Maybe one day I'll land a better job and get back on my feet. It's a cliche, but I wanted to thank those of you who offered support and understanding amidst the hate. This might be my last post here, deleting after I settle into my new job. Thanks for reading, Reddit. It's been a ride. I knew that my wife was a lover of flashy life, but I had never thought that one day she would leave me for a rich young athlete. I trusted her, and showed her the most precious love that others dream of, but she didn't appreciate anything I had done for her. So she resorted to cheating with a young boy just because he was rich or more affording than I was. So I, male 52, met this wonderful, bubbly, yet respectful and sophisticated wife of mine, years back when I was still in university. Well, I was doing my second year in philosophy and science, meaning I was what they call a nerd. I was so obsessed with science and philosophy, so I was always on my books and experimentations. I loved learning about people's lives, especially the people from the past. My wife, female 51, was doing marketing studies at Boston College, which was not far from where I was residing at a student's accommodation. Our relationship was going really great, much to her friends' disapproval. I was glad that she was not ashamed of me in our relationship. I fell in love with her each and every day. As I was a nerd, as they would say, she understood me and my obsessions because she would sometimes go with me to historical sites. We connected very well. I remember when she used to call and ask if I had eaten, and if I had not eaten, I would hear a knock at my door, and there she was with a big container carrying food she had cooked. She knew how to take care of a man in every way. I loved her more for that. So we dated for a year until we elevated our relationship to the next level. That year I got an internship as an assistant professor in philosophy. It was going to be great for me in my dream career as I wanted to be a political scientist. The money I was making was enough for me to get my own place and propose to Bianca, my wife. I proposed to her 2 months after she had moved in with me. That time she had also started her own social media marketing platform and she was doing pretty well in her job. I was really proud of her. She was also going to graduate that year, so things were going well on her side. Everything was going well on our side, if I may say. So as she was doing her social media marketing, she would sometimes go and meet up with either influencers or other people who needed her talent and skill in marketing. We were so happy and lacked nothing. She continued being the great fiancé who knew how to take care of a man. She always made sure to come back earlier at home so she could cook for her man. I really appreciated her in my life. She had already met my family and they welcomed her very well. I mean, who wouldn't? She was a goddess inside and out. She was what we call beauty with brains. And everything was settled after she had met my family. Well, 9 months passed and we decided to tie a knot. We didn't want any drastic and attention-seeking wedding, so we opted for a nice intimate wedding ceremony with our close friends and family. Well, I didn't have any friends. My friends were my brothers, so I had invited a few of my colleagues. That was the day I had trapped myself in a deceitful and unfaithful situation in my life. Only if I had known that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. 5 years later, my wife got promoted from the marketing company that she was working at from bringing a financial manager to chief financial officer, CFO. I was so proud of her and the achievements she had made. While on another hand, she got pregnant with our firstborn baby boy. We were so happy and so much in love, you know. I had also become a political scientist and life was great. Things also started changing in the 5 years after my son was born. Bianca was a lovely mother. I won't lie on that, but the company would get lots of clients that would want their agency to do the marketing, especially when there would be big events. Meaning more money was coming and she had to make sure that the finances of the company were always on point. So we had to hire a stay-home nanny to stay with our son because we would both get super busy to the point that we would have to travel to other countries. Well, I would be busy like that. Time passed and she changed. She was no longer a present parent to the children. She was just distant, you know. I thought there was something stressing her out, maybe work-related, but when I asked her, she would say work is fine. I don't want to lie, my wife's behavior really worried me and it was breaking my heart because we had a tradition that forbids us to do anything, either work-related or meeting up with friends, because Sundays were for spending time with the children and go out as a family, more like taking the kids out to play games and have fun. But my lovely wife was no longer available on Sundays. She would go during brunch time and come back late at night when the children were asleep. You know, sometimes when the kids are lucky to see their mother in the morning before going to daycare, they would ask Bianca if she could take them to daycare because they missed going with her. You wouldn't believe the excuse she gave the kids. She would say, "Oh no, babies, I cannot drive you to daycare today because mommy is in a hurry and I will be late for work if I start by dropping you off at the daycare center." To say I was disappointed by her behavior because it was affecting the children negatively. She was no longer a wife that I had chosen and fell in love with. She had become someone else that we don't know. She would even wear a coat and tie it like a gown. She would say that she was going to a meeting with the finance team. Mind you, that time she had even changed her appearance, her smell. She had started wearing red lipstick that are usually worn by those who sell their bodies. I just don't know how many times I had tried to negotiate for some intimate moments, but she would complain about being tired and not in the mood. You know, when you have been married to a person for 3 decades, I take that as enough time to know your partner. If you know your partner like I do with mine, you would see that she was seeing someone else or she was doing something very bad that would even crush and destroy our marriage. As much as I wanted to stay hopeful that my wife would get back to being the wife that I loved and know, but I knew that I had to do something to get my wife back, you know. Our 30th anniversary was approaching and I knew that Bianca had forgotten about it since she was too occupied with whatever or whoever that she was busy with. I decided to plan a special and a surprise anniversary trip to the beach, hoping that it would bring us closer together and reignite the spark in our relationship. I booked a beautiful beachfront house, complete with a private pool and a stunning view of the ocean, thanks to my assistant for finding the stunning place for us. I spent hours planning the perfect itinerary, complete with romantic dinners, sunset walks on the beach, and relaxing spa treatments. I wanted my wife to be happy, you know. The day of our anniversary trip finally arrived, and I was filled with excitement and anticipation. But Bianca seemed distant and distracted as we packed our bags and headed out the door. But I tried not to let it dampen my spirits. I was sure that that weekend was going to be the best and I was going to win my wife back. As we arrived at our destination, I was struck by the breathtaking beauty of the beach. The sun was shining, the waves were crashing, and the salty ocean air filled my lungs. I felt a sense of peace and tranquility wash over me, and I knew that this was exactly what we needed. We spent the first few days of our trip relaxing and reconnecting. We took long walks on the beach, held hands, and talked about our dreams and aspirations. It felt like the old US was back, and I was filled with hope and joy. I didn't know if my wife was really happy or if she was pretending to be happy just for my sake. But whatever mood she was in was great and refreshing because we enjoyed our day until she excused herself and said she had an important call to make to check on the marketing and finance team from work. I understood and excused her because I knew how much she loved her job and her position, so she would always be fussy about it and check how it was every now and then. She was too overprotective of the company that she was working for like it was her own. I remember when I would complain about her spending more time at the office to a point that she would come home very late to make sure everything was running smoothly. She would tell me that she loves and respects her position at work, so she would do anything and everything to make sure that her department was running smoothly. She would say that being a CFO needed all her love and attention, so she was treating it like it was her own child before our three beautiful babies. So she had to protect their legacy any way possible, even if he had an assistant. But she still wanted to run everything by herself. But my wife was not paying attention to me anymore. It was like we were there on a business or work trip and not our anniversary. She was always talking about business and the events that would happen not far from where we were, even in our bedroom, which made me somehow bored because it was always a work conversation every now and then. Nothing about us. She was so excited about the event. It was like she was the one who was launching another branch. Even our intimate moments were no longer the same. I had thought the trip was going to help us reconnect, but I guess I was the only one who was investing in this marriage. As we were sitting by the pool enjoying a refreshing drink before Bianca, my ex-wife, went to make an important call. I received a call from my assistant telling me that a very important man who was a professor in philosophy and is retired because of age wanted to meet with me, since he was also not far from where we were visiting. I didn't waste any more time. I went to the hotel room and prepared for the meeting on the following day. I saw my wife glued on her phone, busy laughing and blushing. She didn't even notice that I was in the room. I tried telling the good news that my assistant had told me, and guess what her response was? She responded by saying, which is something I was not expecting from her. She then told me to prepare for the launch as it was happening on that day. I was angry at her because she didn't tell me any time the whole time, then she told me to prepare. I knew that I had to find out what was making my wife so distant and always laughing and blushing with her phone. Their event happened, but I decided to go back to the hotel room earlier because my wife was too busy socializing with people. But I had noticed the way she was looking at her boss and the way they were laughing and touching each other. It was kind of disgusting, but because people are too ignorant, they didn't see what I saw. The next day I went to the meeting. I got back to the hotel in the mid-morning. Mind you, that day was our last day of our trip. I had thought that by the time our trip ends, we would have put our differences aside and fixed our marriage. That time it was our anniversary day, and I had reserved it for us at a fancy restaurant opposite where our hotel room was. On the morning of our 30th anniversary, I woke up with a sense of excitement and pride. 30 years of marriage to the love of my life, Bianca, was something to celebrate. As I entered the hotel, well, our hotel had a living room. As I entered, I could hear faint laughter coming from the bedroom that we use. My heart swelled with happiness at the thought of my wife being in such high spirits on our special day. I had missed hearing her laugh so happily. But as I neared the living room, the laughter turned into hushed whispers. A sense of unease washed over me as I pushed the door open, only to be met with a sight that shattered my world. There in the arms of her boss was my wife Bianca. They were locked in a passionate embrace, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight. My breath caught in my throat as I stood frozen in disbelief. How could she betray me like this on the day of our 30th anniversary? I asked myself why she wouldn't tell me if she was no longer happy. I asked what was going on, and you would see that words got stuck in Bianca's tongue. My wife, or let me say my ex-wife, is actually not a person who just gets tongue-tied. She always has answers for everything, but that day she was stuck and she froze on the spot. It was like her mind went into another freezing zone and it couldn't think properly. My heart was beating pretty fast. I didn't know what to do. I was not angry. I was livid, furious, enraged. And the boss, on another hand, just sat there and looked me in the eyes like he was daring me to do something. I couldn't believe the guy. He should have just apologized and left, but no. He sat there waiting for whatever I was going to do. Later on the following day, my wife and I went back to New York. I didn't talk to her for the whole 2 days. The only thing I did on our way back home was glancing at me with eyes full of suspicion and anger. I was angry at her, but mostly I was angry at myself because I was certain that whatever she did it because of me. But that didn't give her any platform outside our marriage to cheat, especially with her boss. Don't they have a code of conduct or policies or rules at her workplace? Why would you date your senior knowing that it is against the company rules? So after a week of us back at home, I came back from work and asked to speak to Bianca. I'm sure that if she knew what I wanted to talk about, she wouldn't have agreed to have a talk with her, but she didn't know. So I sat her down and told her that I knew about what she did. She started getting confused because obviously I knew what she did. I saw her kissing another man. Not just any man, but her boss. And I know that she had thought we were past that, but then I told her that I had found out about what had been going on between her and her boss. I simply told her that I couldn't believe the lie she had told him, so I decided to run an investigation to see if what I did with Jake was only a kiss he saw, or there was more to it. I told her that I saw a video of her at the club kissing another guy. I told her that she was just like all the other loose and cheap women, who were always looking for fun and good times with other men. I then told her to pack all her rags and get out of my house because I was not going to be responsible for what I would do to her, for deceiving and lying to me. I didn't feel like doing anything to her because I felt like it would be useless to do something to her and not get anything in return. I had to respect myself and my dignity because of my line of work. The following week, she was served with divorce papers. She tried fighting it, but the evidence that I had was too strong, so she signed the papers, and I was given 50% share of everything she has and owns. I then applied for full custody of our children. I didn't want my children to be exposed to a negative environment where my children would be introduced to many men because of their mother's evil ways. I love my peace, but I love my children more, and I no longer wanted Bianca's pathetic self to have anything to do with my children. She may call them and ask them to visit her, but they were my own responsibility. In the days that followed, I experienced a roller coaster of emotions. I was consumed by anger, bitterness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I couldn't understand how someone I had loved so deeply could hurt me in such a callous manner. The pain was so intense that it physically hurt to breathe. But as the initial shock began to fade, I realized that I had a choice to make. I could wallow in my pain and allow this betrayal to consume me, or I could use it as an opportunity for growth and healing. I chose the latter. I sought therapy to help me process my emotions and make sense of the betrayal. My therapist helped me see that my worth was not defined by my wife's actions, and that I deserved to find happiness and peace in my life. I slowly began to let go of the anger and resentment, replacing them with acceptance and forgiveness. As I stood there in the midst of the wreckage of my past life, and the memories of Bianca and myself from the first day we saw each other, I knew that the path ahead would be difficult and uncertain. But one thing was certain: I would no longer be shackled by the expectations of others and putting my love and trust in people, be ruled by the obligations of a broken marriage. I would be true to myself, follow my heart, and embrace the future with open arms, with a newfound sense of determination. The memories of our wedding day played in my mind like a movie reel. The vows we exchanged, the promises we made to each other, the love that had once been so strong between us. But now, it all felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the affair that had consumed my ex-wife. I was grateful for the love, teachings, and everything she had given me. She gave me a chance in her life and spent the whole 30 years being in my life. As much as it's really hard to believe, but I have to in order to heal faster. Now all I do is live for myself and my children. My job is doing even much better, and I have started checking for historical sites that I would visit. It was time to let go and start afresh. Time to cry over a spilt milk was not going to work. So far, I would say life has been good to me. Even Bianca had not called me, swearing at me and telling me that she wanted her children, and I was very much grateful for that because I wanted nothing to do with her. I knew there and then that happiness is found within yourself, and you create your own happiness without going out and doing things that you would regret later. I also learned that everyone was born alone, so you shouldn't try and find happiness or validation elsewhere. You only have yourself in this world and no one else. But I learned that the hard way, but I'm grateful for the lessons I have learned. I also surrounded myself with friends and family who supported me unconditionally. Their love and encouragement gave me the strength to move forward and rebuild my life. I took up new hobbies, started exercising regularly, and focused on self-care. I started to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage and found joy in the simple things in life. As time passed, the wounds began to heal, and I found myself gradually letting go of the pain and heartache. I realized that the affair was not a reflection of my worth as a person, but rather a reflection of my wife's shortcomings and insecurities. I found peace in knowing that I had given my all to the relationship and that I deserved better. I know that most of y'all, especially men, would think I am weak for not ruining or making Bianca suffer, but sometimes it's just better to choose peace and let the universe do everything for you. Not everything needs violence, just leave everything as it is. Sit back and watch karma do what it does best. I mean, it visits everyone right. Eventually, I was able to truly forgive my wife for her actions. I released the anger and hurt that had weighed me down for so long and found a sense of freedom and peace in letting go. I wished her well and hoped that she would find the happiness she was searching for. I even changed custody for the children to join because I felt like every child needs their mother. I gave her strict instructions that she must not introduce my children to her men. My healing journey after finding my wife cheating with her boss was a long and arduous one, filled with pain and introspection. But through therapy, support from loved ones, and a commitment to my own well-being, I was able to emerge from the darkness stronger and more resilient than ever before. I learned that I am capable of overcoming even the most devastating of betrayals and that true healing comes from within. And for that, I am eternally grateful. I don't know if I made the right decision, though, to let my wife go just like that and not avenge my broken heart on how I dealt with Bianca's boss situation. I'm not a violent person. What do you think I should have done for what she did to my heart in our 30 years of marriage? Please help me with advice. How do you think I should have dealt with the issue?